Hey guys, an update on things. I haven't been posting because oh my god, I've been so busy. Anyway, it's summertime and I'm still extremely busy, but I'll see what I can do as far as these reviews. Today, however, I made the time to do this bit because I have had this bottled up for too long. I have a lot of feelings about Roosterteeth's Camp and all of them are strong.
Now let's talk about
Camp.
Can we talk about
Camp.
Please, Mac, I'm dying to talk about
Camp.
with you all day.
So much so that I am temporarily reviving the first 100 series because, my lord, this is some shit. Now, I'm not going to be doing the previous model, one review per episode, uploading it every day, because that was exhausting. Instead, I'm going to look at episodes in clusters. For today, the Hopeful Bunch, the first 4 episodes of Camp. Camp is a cartoon about a summer camp that's also a money laundering scam unbeknownst to his enthusiastic leader David, whom the main character Max, a tough pessimistic kid, finds incredibly annoying. Max recruits Nikki, a hyper-feral child, and Neil, a jumpy science kid, in his quest to either escape Camp or kill David. Now, the character traits I mentioned above are it for the first 4 episodes. That's the only traits we get. I'm not complaining yet, because characters should only be as complex as the work they're in. Showing off too many traits too quickly is often overwhelming for an audience, and showing too little traits is boring. For instance, in an 11-minute piece, characters should probably only have one vague trait, unless it's an open and closed story with no follow-up about a dynamic character. However, as the series goes on, the characters should begin to assume more traits, known as character development. And if the series goes on long enough, these traits should even occasionally change. In a non-linear format like Camp, though, the rules are a little difficult because these shows are meant to be so each episode is someone's first. In these cases, characters should still develop traits as the series goes on, but they can't be shown too heavily in any one episode. A failure in this can result in shows becoming less entertaining as they drag on. Now that I've explained that, I can move on to the show itself. The first episode of Camp is a setup. Max gets dropped off, Neil freaks out when he discovers he's part of a scam camp, and Nikki is excited for adventure no matter what. We also set up David, who loves the camp with a great passion, and his assistant Gwen, who's cynical and has anxiety. Already I saw a problem in that there's a repeated character dynamic. Max is to Nikki, with Neil being the straight man mediator, what David is to Gwen. Now, these characters aren't identical. David is easily scared and safe, while Nikki is fearless. Gwen is a nervous wreck, sort of pessimist, while Max is a I'm gonna die anyway, so might as well fuck everything up while I'm at it kind of pessimist. This doesn't change the fact that the balance is repeated though. For the most part, however, these few traits are all they needed for the first 4 episodes. It keeps the humor simple. Since today we're only talking about the first 4 episodes, I won't say anything more about that. As we set up in the first episode, they explain the formula like the tutorial of a video game. Max doesn't care about the well-being of others and will fight for his way. Neil just doesn't like nature and would rather be in a place with accommodations, and Nikki is a complete wild card and will probably be the one to either start or stop a lot of conflict, sometimes both. They attempt to escape the camp in this episode, but fail because they're kids and not very good at it, which will end up being a reoccurring theme. This is a very textbook way of doing it, and I have 0 complaints. Sure, these tutorial episodes come off as slow and stiffly written, but that's because these episodes typically follow a formula heavier than the later episodes. Just like, again, the tutorial to a video game. At this point, I'm going to explain the plots, so spoilers, I guess, if you can use the word spoiler for non-linear comedy. I'll have each of the 4 episodes I mentioned linked in the description, and this show is available for free on YouTube, so there's no cost to you to click on those links if you want to check it out yourself and form your own opinion before you hear me. Or after. Preferably after, because I can't guarantee you're going to come back here. As we move into my second and so far favorite episode, although I've only seen up to episode 9 upon writing this review, I'd like to talk about the plot structure. This episode does a great job splitting into an A and B plot, meaning that there's 2 going on at the same time that interlace. After Max kills the camp mascot, an admittedly funny Rube Goldberg gag as a cold opening, we quickly jump into Act 2 of this episode. Max goes off with the quartermaster and Neil goes with Nikki to hunt in wild. They time the cuts between these 2 parties nicely, and when it comes together in the 3rd act, it doesn't feel like it was tied in a rush. Now, as Max goes with the quartermaster through the woods, the quartermaster mumbles. Now, I can't hear very well, which is why I use subtitles, and thank Roosterteeth for actually subbing one of their shows. But apparently somewhere in this mumble...
Hey, so, how'd you lose that hand anyway?
Yeah, Grandma and Grandma, the Jews, Grandma.
The quartermaster says, the Jews. But the only reason I know is because of the subtitles, and I don't know... If you can hear and you are able to hear that, tell me, because really I would not have noticed if it weren't in the subtitles. I mention this because later in the episode, Max says this.
So what's with the quartermaster and Jews?
Without knowing that the quartermaster had mumbled the Jews in his mumble spiel, this question just sounds completely absurd, although to be fair, even with it, the joke they set up for really did not pay off. That's it. Look, if you're using sensitive material, you have better do it damn good, otherwise, you look like a cheap asshole. And guess what? You look like a cheap asshole. It's not the only anti-Semitic joke either. A kid named Dolph that looks not so subtly like Hitler also says this about the mascot.
He should be fierce and pure.
If it didn't work this time, why did they try it a second? I'm starting to think maybe writing animated comedy isn't the same as writing live-action comedy and they choked on jokes. Also, in the first act, there's a joke about periods that almost worked.
Lady sickness. My mom used to get that all the time.
How do you cure it?
Edge closer to death.
A lot of people in the comments liked this joke, but it was to me. Could use rewriting, really the timing's what's off here. Then we have a visual gag with the quartermaster dragging a body that nobody acknowledges, and a joke where David wrongfully thinks he taught Max about friendship when Max hangs out with the quartermaster to get away from David for a day that I did like. Then there's a joke about different schools of magic that I could see being funny to somebody else, but it wasn't my thing. Then there's a bunch of jokes I'm not even gonna bother counting. A joke about mana that falls flat, and wow, I should keep these as like tallies or something. The buddy system joke, also flat. Oh, wow. A joke is made almost every 5 seconds in the second act, sometimes more. Maybe this is Camp Camp's problem. A complete oversaturation of jokes, most of which are mediocre at best. This would have been a good episode had they just only used a third of the jokes, and as I said earlier, this one was my favorite. This is as good as it gets in my personal opinion. Once it gets into the third act, it definitely gets better. It comes from a joke every 5 seconds, like every 10, and that's really... This ends with an ex machina, Gwen, showing up out of nowhere to save the campers from a platypus, and her straight man edition actually does contrast nicely. So all in all, I like the third act. It's a good way to end, except it has this part where the joke is that it's a bunch of kids accidentally saying a sex word.
Does this mean we'll be the Camp Campbell Platties?
No, I don't think so.
What about the pussies?
Definitely not.
Yeah, I like that.
Pussies for life.
You guys, no.
With this episode concluding, I'll go ahead and take this time to say, as far as I can tell, Roosterteeth plays small artist music at the end of their videos to advertise them, which I think is cool. I could be wrong about that, but seeing how it's a different song each ending, that's what I'm guessing is up. I don't really know any songs in this genre, so it's possible it's just mainstream. Moving on to the third episode, I don't have much to say about it. I did like the hardcore joke with the guy on the boat, and I thought it was a cool way to start the episode and split into an A and B party, split with Max being kidnapped and with Neil and Nikki washing ashore at an all-girls camp. The first line with David was ingenious to me.
Another wonderful day at Camp Campbell. All that's left to do now is recharge with a full 8 hours of lying in bed, awake, waiting for tomorrow.
And that's actually the first thing you see when you open the episode. It's a good start, a solid first act, I'd say, no real complaints. I feel the writers tried too hard with the Flower Scouts, although the Wood Scouts were fine, although a little under-designed. The episode kinda turns into an actual kids show for a bit and tries to have a moral about gender roles explained in a simple, unmodified way. It feels like I was watching Sesame Street, honest, but with more jokes about kids talking about sex but not knowing they're talking about sex. Moving on to episode 4, which is also pretty unmemorable, there is a joke in here that is only present in the subtitles. At some point, Erin says she's renaming the place to Camp Cool Kids. except all the C's are K's, so it ends up having the same abbreviation as the KKK.
Sure thing, Nikki. Everyone can be cool at Camp Cool Kids.
Now, it's possible they were originally going to make this frankly lame joke, but I guess they ended up scrapping it altogether, although it remained in the subtitles. But not in the title of the episode, where it's spelled with C's. General composition in this episode, and often in the show itself, is weak. This was especially obvious to me when Max was mad at Nikki. Due to the character design, Max's arms are short to the point where Nikki and Max were so close that their silhouettes overlapped. This is generally not a good means of composition. Near the end, we get yet another Nazi joke. Why? Then there's a joke I rather liked.
You kids and your dreams, so full of hope and ignorance. Someday you'll learn that no matter how righteous you think your cause is, there's always someone bigger to keep you down. And that day is today, and that someone is me.
And then the episode ends. Now, I never try to judge a cartoon by its first 4 episodes, that's my rule. By the 4th, however, we should be approaching where characters need to become more complex and the formula will begin to break down. The 5th is typically the turning point episode. As far as first 4 episodes go, Camp is actually pretty good. First 4s almost always suffer from an identity crisis, and this one at least seemed to have an idea as to what it's doing. First 4s are also typically the least funny as the writers scramble to get people to come back. But from the other episodes I've seen, this doesn't stop. Each episode feels like a plea to watch the next, rather than just getting people to watch next by actually planning out the jokes. Other Roosterteeth media gets it, but for some reason Camp does it. These jokes are very first draft sounding, and while the first 4 are alright for the first 4 episodes, they're simply too poorly planned to be the next 5. Hope you'll catch me next time when I review the next cluster of episodes. Ciao!